McCown and Shannon back with you, and Pierre McGuire is with us today. I gather you've kept an eye on the playoffs so far.
Yeah, I've been
Um,
watching a few games, Bob. Absolutely.
Oh, a
yeah,
few games. I know you. You've watched every one, you bugger.
Just like you, except I don't have two at a time on different networks. I'm not criticizing the people that are doing the games.
yeah. Well, we were chatting just before we came on about officiating, and the officiating certainly has been an issue in these playoffs. But it's an issue that was the opposite 20 years ago. We used to yammer every year and during the playoffs about officials putting their whistles away and only calling things that were obvious and that they had to call. And that's not the case anymore. They seem like they're calling the game tight and like they do in the regular season, Pierre.
No, I would agree with that, Bob. I don't think the standards change very much. Here's the one thing that I find really interesting, having started in the league as a coach in 1990. The thing that's really amazing to me is how many games are going to overtime and how many penalties are actually being called early in overtime. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, we didn't see that very often back in those days.
No, that was you never got calls at overtime. That was when they put the whistles away more than anything else. But that's not what people want. People said you've got if you're going to have a standard, you maintain that standard in the third period, and you maintain that standard when it goes past 60 minutes, and that's exactly what's happened.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, but we used to say that back 20 years ago. We used to say the same thing, and the NHL just were
well, they didn't. They wouldn't listen to you. They wouldn't.
That's right.
But here's what's happened too, Bob, and it's now, in my opinion, it's now been 17 years, and it's taken almost a generation of officiating and a generation of these players to say, you know what, we're going to live and die with the rule book, and you are calling things in the third period that we would never have seen called before, and that same thing is happening in the overtimes, because that's what the teams and that's what the players have wanted. The managers dictate a lot of this. They dictate a lot of this in their regular meetings with the league office, and they said, no, we want the standard to be maintained, and that's exactly what's happened.
Go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, have they gone over the line?
No, I don't think they've gone over the line, but here's the interesting thing is, back in the day, if a team had a 2 or 3 goal lead going into the third period, chances are the opposition wasn't coming from behind. Now we're seeing it happen almost every single night in the playoffs.
Right.
And I think a part of that is going back to 2005 and taking the red line out. When you took the red line out, you allowed the stretch pass. And also when you changed the rules to having 0 tolerance on obstruction and hooking and holding without the red line, you created a speed dynamic that made it almost impossible for teams to defend against super elite or super skilled teams. And so that's why I think we're seeing such exciting hockey in the playoffs. But I also think, going back to our original premise, it's affecting the officiating. And
Sure.
John, I think you would agree, the game's too fast for the way it's being officiated right now.
The adjustment to the players to speed also it pertains to the officiating. The referees at times are having a difficult time keeping up to the speed of the game. And they're human. They're human. I mean, look at what's happened in these playoffs alone when there's a vicious body check, and now there are rules in place to allow a referee to say, I'm going to call it a major penalty, but then I can review it, and I can knock it down from a major penalty to a 2-minute penalty to no penalty at all. We would have think that this is unconscionable 20 years ago, that the human aspect of officiating is out the window, but they want to get it right. I mean, that's one of the things that now people are siding on the cautious side, saying, let's call it a major, let's use it as a safety net to then say, okay, let's take a look at it, we'll talk to Toronto about it, and then we'll decide whether even if it's a penalty at all.
Well, I guess so. Look at another thing that's happened this year more than any other year that I can recall is away teams winning at an extraordinary rate.
They won 11 in a row until the Seattle game last night, Bob.
Exactly. I mean, what causes that?
The rinks are all the same. The Boston Garden is gone. The Chicago Stadium's gone. The Odd in Buffalo is gone. The Coliseum in Quebec is gone. The Forum in Montreal is gone. Every single rink is 200 by 85. Players aren't intimidated by fan noise. The fans can't really affect the outcome of a game because these guys are truly professional. And if you really do the whole dig deep on it, most of these guys are playing World Junior when they're 17, 18, 19. So they're exposed to big moments in foreign environments. They're exposed to Olympics. They're exposed to World Championship. It's totally changed. But I think the biggest thing is home ice advantage has gone away because every rink is cookie cutter. They're 200 by 85.
You're not wrong, except that we did not see that in the regular season. You know, the regular season was basically a normal regular season where home teams won 54% of the games.
It's a fair
well,
point.
They're less than 50% now.
No.
Well below. I think the number's like 18 and 12, 19 and 12 right now, where the domination of the road team. Now,
yeah,
you look at the last 3 nights, you know, that could have got us to 12 consecutive without the Seattle victory. Those are higher seeded teams going into those buildings and winning. But we've all talked all playoff long about, you know, other than the Boston Bruins, they're the anomaly. Is there really much difference between teams, you know, 2 to 14? And I don't think there really is.
Well, no, there isn't. We talked about that at the beginning of the playoffs. That what we have this year is we have the Boston Bruins, and then we have a whole pack of teams that are basically equal.
I think that's fair. Colorado, you know, you look at their team on paper, injury has played a role. Not having Gabriel Landeskog is pretty significant for that group, but I'm not going to just pick on them. Injuries played a role with Tampa, but you're right. The Bruins have been the best team in the league. There's no question about that. That organization deserves a ton of credit. Look what they did at the trade deadline. You know, you go out and get Orlov, you go out and get Hathaway, you go out and get Bertuzzi. Without ruining the fabric of your roster. It's an amazing job by Donnie Sweeney. I don't think enough people are talking about what he's done in Boston in terms of just at the trade deadline in particular.
Well, they've done that with they've even done that in the 2 games, at least the 2 games in Florida without Bergeron and David Krejci. I mean, Krejci played in Boston, and they've done this without Patrice Bergeron playing. So that speaks to that depth you were talking about, Pierre, that they've been able to manage a roster not of 20 or 21, but a roster of 26 in order to be that effective.